construction they did on the lower front corner of the church. I guess it was last year. This is a gorgeous, I don't know if this is also
That's a great picture.
a Winston podium or not, but different season, obviously. And this is post-dam. You got the dam in the middle, so mid-50s on. The Rabbit Hill, I'm guessing the Rabbit Hill was in business then, but, and the new porch on the church here. This was closed from 25 to 36. That was one of their struggles. I'm supposed to know who that is, but I've forgotten. I think there are some things from the Upper Waterford had a Union church, and I think I lost what Helen had sent me. She had also sent me a thing, so that's why I took something out of the town report to hand out. But do you remember some of the facts that Helen had in that? She said she used it at the house tour.
Yeah.
Rhubarb thing. Do you remember something that I'm forgetting?
Well, I know the Upper Waterford Church was moved at one point, but I had thought that it was moved here and it wasn't.
No, but this, according to that history, this has been here and burnt and been, I don't know if it burnt once or twice, but when I was a kid, the folks were still going to this church, and there was two big old wood stoves downstairs, and the chimneys behind that cross on the outside. So the pipes ran the whole length of the building, but the stoves were like here and comparable place over there. And you open these slats, these little wooden things here, to let the heat come up when you wanted it and not come up when you didn't want it.
That's Helen's one.
Oh, that's Helen. Okay, thank you. We'll hand this around. Is that the sanctuary from Upper Waterford behind you, Beth, there?
Yep. Yep, and some of the items from that sanctuary ended up in the church in East St. Johnsbury.
Oh, okay. There's a tool around here somewhere that Carol Campbell was showing me. And this is a story which I think is correct, but of course this was here long before electricity. And my understanding is in the middle of this thing over here, there's a ring. So this you could pull it from here and push it from here. And I've never been up in the attic here, if you call it an attic. But my conception of it is way back, these things had to be on a pulley and weight system. You pull them down and light the lamps or candles, whatever you had on it, and then push it back up. But it doesn't need to go up and down anymore because we have electricity.
The one in the State House in Montpelier is rigged that way.
Is that right?
You can see the pulley. They still bring it up and down.
Okay. Beth is one of our historical treasures. She's not historical, but she is big into history.
Over 50 you are.
She can wring more out of a computer than anybody I've ever seen, as far as facts. She's great. But they do have. This church is tied in with the one in East St. J, and it's closed in the winter now just because it's so expensive to heat. But they have a yoke parish, I guess you call it. And the clock that actually used to be there is downstairs now. I remember folding back the cushion on the pew and standing up on the pew and helping Dad wind it was an old wind-up clock, so you'd start it for the service and run down during the week. So, 45 minutes, I'm not going to get very far there.
And you were.
If any of you need to peel away at any time, it's not going to hurt my feelings, or just, this is just home, so I'm just home, running my mouth. Old map in maybe the one that Beth is lugging there, that would have been identified as a Stoddard place. Stoddard was a big name in town, and this Winston Pody used to come here often, especially in the winter, to take pictures.
Barn Foundation.
Of course, that house wasn't there, and he'd just go up there, and he'd come down to the folks and ask for the key, and they'd turn on the lights in the church and lights in our house to make a nice winter scene. And he always managed to have the full moon up there. I don't know if it was always timed or if he put it in, but by wagon I mean a horse-drawn
Right, a whole
wagon.
Yeah. Okay.
If you were upstairs, this was the family place here, and like I said, everything had a barn, and this had a barn, of course. The L was actually longer and much lower, as you can see in the picture. The interesting thing about this barn was it was also the town party. Barns had 2 holes in them, and that had no facilities, that had no facilities. I don't know what the women did. Probably just held it. But the men, I remember as a kid seeing the men go in and out there, just a hasp on the door with a little piece of wood that you put in, and there was a 2-holer in there, and most of the time they had the privilege of visiting with a pig while they were on the 2-holer. So, I was here before it, which is the one that I was showing you in the back of the book here. There was a blodgett there, probably tied into Warren and all those people at one time. And Dad, I don't know when Grammy had bought that, but Dad tore it down and built this house when he and Mother got married. And the parsonage, see, this was a residential street. And actually, that land came all the way over to where this tree is and some others that are gone. The wall came right over to there, which tells me this was laid out after the land was laid out. A little hump here. This is what Dad and his brother, with a horse and the old-fashioned horse team and old-fashioned scoop, dug out for the cellar of that house when he built it. Now the parsonage was a full 2-story, like the 2 up on the street. I never saw this, of course, but it would have set right here, setting this way. And it set perpendicular to the road instead of parallel, like most of the houses do. And Davy's owned, like Beth said, anytime you want to throw in something about Davy, please help me out. But Davy's owned this land, and my Uncle Mervyn was living there, and he bought this lot from Davies with the understanding that the building be taken down because it was in poor repair, and the church would have been closed in that time frame, and I guess the parsonage was expendable. This house used to have an L. L is the wrong word. L signifies like this. But anyway, it had an end on it, like most houses do. And in the 50s, a family named Henderson was living there, and Ernest got a little careless with some rags by a stove and had a fire. And of course, we didn't have a fire department. St. J was 20-25 minutes away with the old fire trucks. But they did manage to save the house. There was a barn out back there next to the line, and that was torn down, I don't know when, 60s, 70s maybe. The thing with the fire here, he had kerosene gravity feed for some kind of a stove, and they had the fire almost out, but the structure had weakened enough so this tank came down in the dooryard and burst and sprayed the end of the building with kerosene, and they were right back in it. But they did manage to save the main house and reconstruct it, so to speak, or salvage what was left.
So that barn was back beyond what's the garage now?
Yeah, just a little further. It was more space between the house and the barn than there is now, Beth.
Okay, because I'm looking at the age of the trees and thinking those have some age on them, so they must have been there when the barn was.
The parsonage lot extension, the line would have been right about here.
Okay.
The land here was also rearranged at that time after the fire. They brought some dirt from out back and made this used to just slope down to the street. The reason I'm coming down here is just show you where the road used to peel off here. And I don't know if we can see any of the foundation of the Goss house here or not. This has been all part of the family. That a lot of us in the history group have met Bob Goss. He's written extensively about his big family. Yeah, there's some walls right there, both near us and further away, and that would have been the Goss house, which was in good repair in this picture, but that's over 100 years ago. So right following, excuse me,
Sorry.
right up through here, the road just followed what you'll see as the wood line as we go back up to the street, and that was the main drag. And if you go down about as far as we've walked already, there's barways into the field, and then let's see, this would be about a third, 2/3, and another third to the river. Be about a third of the way to the river.
Is this like a public road access?
It is a public road. Once you get past that field, you're on power company land.
Oh,
But
okay.
people go down there and camp. You'd want a four-wheel drive to go down there and still be careful.
Yeah.
But people go down there to fish. They'll take a little camper down there in the summer, and
Yeah.
sometimes they spend the... Further down on the brook, Craig has visited it. I haven't. There's used to be a tannery. We ought to check it out sometime.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because it's not on any of the maps, but it's a huge
Dad,
foundation.
the only thing I know about is Dad used to talk about it being a tannery down there. There were a number of buildings, both residences and one that looks like some kind of an industrial building right as you approach the river, which of course the river was further then because it wasn't flooded. In the town clerk's office up there, if you step back in on your own there, and look in the back wall by the safe there, there's a picture, there's a artist, Charles Newsham. He lives in Colchester right now, but he's got an interest in Lower Waterford, and he's done some sketches, or paintings, of how he thought things might be. And one of them kind of matches my conception of it. One of them doesn't. But anyway, that's a great walk if somebody ever wants to head down to the river. Very peaceful and quiet down there.
Is this where the original road was, or was it on the other side of that wall?
Oh no, that's the house I'm talking about.
Okay,
that's the house. That's the Goss. No,
Because I'm looking at...
this is the road, but instead of going up there, it peeled right off to the kind of like a very narrow key here. And when we get up on the street, I'll show you where it came up.
Okay, you can see what's puzzling me. Is
Yep.
Goss is over to this side of the road on this map, and that side's Kinney. Or maybe Kinney's here.
I think about
Rabbit Hill.
19 to when the daughters went away in the mid-50s, but about to buy in up. Do you have a lot of information about?
Well,
They must have bought damn near the whole town.
they
Except
did. They
The
did.
Davies.
And things weren't all pretty and painted white and everything at that point.
Right.
Things had gone downhill because of the Depression. And the crash was in 29, the Depression in the 30s, and we were reasonably sure, nobody has written it in those words, but we're reasonably sure that that's why the second dam, the Moore Dam, happened so much later. The original plan had all three dams going boom, 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 McIndoes and Comerford and Moore. And the land was cleared for the Moore Dam in around 1930 as the Comerford Dam was being built. But the crash happened, everybody's holdings went down, all the available cash went down, and the village became to some degree much emptier than it is today. So Mr. Davies came in and bought up, I think, 10 or 12 structures at once and began to rehab them to his idea of what a traditional Vermont village should look like. So we see it all white and green now. That's not necessarily how it looked 100 years
Yeah, that
ago.
fits with what Dr. Harrison said. I should have showed this inside there, well, but we can handle this. When I talk about this place being, yeah, just grab it and hand it around. Talk about this place being all barns. That's what I'm talking about. And this is taken across 18. Davies must have had money and been willing to spend it because he really changed the complexion of that, and I guess it must have been him that put together all the land that I know is Ira Walk's farm in the 50s and 60s. But it included a lot of land on that side of 18, and then the little field across from that white farmhouse, and then everything down around here, and a lot
There were barns
up
all
on the side of Rabbit Hill as woodland. It was really a
you've seen this
fantastic
before.
farm.
I have a question
Sure.
about the Davies. What was the general feeling of the town, the residents, of this man coming in and buying up and taking over the town? Did he have good intentions, and was he welcomed and that kind of thing?
I don't see any evidence that he wasn't.
Yeah.
But you're asking about something that's kind of hard to establish after the fact. You can go to Caledonian Record articles, but at that point, Waterford was just this little podunk farming town, and the Caledonian Record wasn't interested in covering it. So you've really got to get to people's personal journals, and I guess that's my moment to make a pitch. If you have family journals, if you have old letters and you just don't have time to get to them, send them toward the history group. We're an official historical society now, and we'll make sure that they get transcribed and preserved and that the material gets out there for other people to access. What we would really need is the Davies family papers to find out what Mr. Davies had in mind, and the papers of somebody else living in town at that time. Now, your family, you had members of the family here how early?
The earliest wasn't my grandparents. They were towards the last. But Morrison started drifting out of the eastern townships of Canada around 1865. And there were a lot of them at one time. Names come and go. If you see on there the Freeman name. Freemans are right around late 1700s, very early 1800s. They were a big name. They settled the first farm down the river, my Uncle Raymond's farm, or herds, if you knew what it's at. They settled where Willard Powers lives now, and they settled where Charlie Lawrence lives now. And they lived, later generations lived on this, what I call a Whittemore farm. First farm if you leave the village, about a half a mile over. What Beth hadn't thrown in and I just thought of, this bustling village, and then this kind of the Depression era thing, like a sine curve. It was the railroads. There was two fords to the river. This was originally a ford, and that was a ford, and then they had a ferry, one or both places. Finally, they built the covered bridges, and this was a really busy route, Portland, this area to Portland and back, with a team of oxen or horses, and that's what Streeter Tavern up in the Upper Waterford, or this place here, the Rabbit Hill, was where if you made it from Littleton to Waterford, especially in the spring when the roads were muddy, the team was done for the day. They needed to rest. 9 miles, and that was it. So it took literally weeks to go to Portland and back. When the railroads came into St. J, the rest is history, as they say. It just, there was no longer the need for horse teams and coaches. Coaches stopped here.
So 1877, the railroad goes through Concord. And that's when the shift happens in terms of Waterford industry. It starts to die back a little bit because you can't get products and materials back and forth as easily. And the stage route dies out around the same time. But Concord's mill industries failed also. And partly that happens in your industrialization between the wars. World War I convinced Americans that we needed to be able to produce things very quickly. This area was a big production region for the Civil War. In terms of iron, in terms of wool, we mattered. We really did. And it's that shift over the next 50 years that you're talking about. As the railroad comes through in a different location, and then as the whole war-oriented industry shifts. So then you go to Fairbanks Mill and the things that feed Fairbanks Mill, and you see the Concord industries collapse too.
Should have Beth do this.
Because I don't have family here, and you do.
She forgets more than I ever knew.
Question?
Yes.
Just going back to the Davies.
Yeah.
So they bought a bunch of properties here, and they started renovating them.
Right.
What did they do? What happened next? Did they rent land, or did they sell it, or what was their intention?
For a while, they just held it all, and eventually people began to rent it. The sales of the property don't happen, I think, for another 20, 25 years after that, when the generation changes. And to your original question about whether there was resentment about it, I'm learning not to take anything for granted about what people felt. One of the things that almost everybody coming to town assumed was that as the dams were built, people must have been really angry that their land was being taken for the dams. It didn't happen that way. It was a gradual process with people selling out, with a couple of people at the end who didn't want to move, but most families got a good price for their land and went on with their lives. It was something expected. So when Mr. Davies came in, most likely many people were grateful to have money at that point.
Was he from here or?
No.
Oh, okay,
I
so
don't know
he was-
where he was going.
I'm going to say Connecticut, but
Okay.
I should
I'm
double
pretty sure
check
he
that.
could make money.
Yes.
By the time I was here, I was born in '46, so my earliest memories would be the early '50s. But there wasn't any rental. There was somebody in every house, and I think the Carpenter place was always secure. But there were people in the two houses there. These two properties were in our family. This house was always owned by somebody, although it changed a lot of hands. Beth mentioned wool. Sheep were here before cattle, and there's a little natural hole in the brook down here called the sheep hole, which I guess they drove sheep through there to wash them years ago. It's the only story I've ever heard. But anyway, we used to swim in there as kids. But if you go around in the woods, different places, you can find sheep fence as opposed to single strand cattle fence. But sheep fence is that grid,
Yeah, it's 3.5
it's
feet
like-
high. It's
Yeah.
the sheep pen. They're three
Yeah,
and a half.
it's-
It was
it-
3
it's-
foot. 3 foot. They jump it. If it was 4 feet, you would work too hard.
So
So
they'd stay
we
in.
know about sheep.
We're bringing sheep back
Yeah.
to Waterford.
You were the
Yeah.
family on the hill
Yeah,
road.
yeah, yeah.
Hurrah!
Yeah.
All
Oh,
right.
okay.
Well, March of next year will be the first 2016 meeting of the Historical Society, and we have a sheep historian coming, partly because you're here. We all want to know more about the sheep that were in Waterford, so we hope you can be there too and fill us in on what kind of sheep you decide to get. Do you already know?
Oh, we have sheep.
Romneys.
They're already living up on the hill.
No kidding. What
Yeah.
kind?
Romney.
All right. How many?
Well, just 6. We just sold off all our lands. We only have 6. But I was at Fairbanks Museum a month or so back, and there's a little section on Waterford, and they said in 1846 there were 7,200 sheep in Waterford.
That's right.
In the 7,200. So
Yeah.
and we want to bring them back.
Hurrah!
All right.
We'll support you.
We'll bring one to the meeting. How about
Yeah.
that?
Good. Well, Elizabeth's supposed to bring a lamb. So if
Yeah.
it times out right. Yep. Good.
For those of you that don't know, Beth is the fearless leader of our little history group. She's got endless energy.
Otherwise known as the troublemaker.
Yeah.
I'm not an officer.
As a result of that, you had buttermilk, but before that, you could set milk and it would separate, and there's cheese and whey. Mother used to make wonderful cottage cheese, much drier than what you have in the store. This place had a barn, which I tore down after Mother died in '03 and reconstructed it. No, I built a barn. It's not a reconstruction, but that had a tie-up for maybe a horse and a couple calves or something like that in it. I don't think the people that lived here actually own land somewhere else. I think,
It was just for their little backyard farm.
yeah.
For the animals.
Yeah, they did have. Yeah, they did have. My grandmother had a great farm. This field up here had over near the corner had a chicken house, and so evidently she had chickens at one point in her life. And I guess the people that lived here would be. Well, Grandpa was a blacksmith, so that was the family industry. When he had the polio, she kind of got into this postmastership, which was a godsend, and she had a little store in the end of that too. And Goss's had a store in the library building, and they had the post office with the store, which still happens. Well, yes, Ellen.
That's right.
Excuse me.
Correct me on this one, but were there people in Waterford who still used horses to get around in the 30s? It seems to me St.
Well-
Johnsbury still had some horses on the roads in the 30s.
Possible.
So
I
you
wasn't
would
here
need
in the
a barn for
30s.
your horses.
Well, yeah, but this picture here is over 100 years old.
Right.
So that puts us back around the turn of the century.
So everybody's got to have horses to get around.
Yeah. They were both my uncle at the first farm and Ernest Powers at the second farm. Ernest Powers never had machinery. He always, you did all your hay in and everything with horses, plowing, raking, all that. And Raymond finally did have a little John Deere MT right towards the end of his farming, which was like early 60s. But some of them still did all their work with horses. But I think Raymond had a car. I've got old pictures of him sitting in the car in front of the house here. He was born in 95, so that could have been like 15 or 20, 1915 or 1920.
Okay.
Yeah. The town also has a lot of these town reports, just because the family's been here for so long. I got a good share of them back to the turn of the century, but these are a lot of information, just because many years they put a picture on the town report. For instance, right here, this is a good picture of the change. This is more or less the same angle. So this is 05, 1905,
Wow.
and you can see things really thinned out in that period. Now here's a picture of the shop that I'll point out where it was. Pretty much down in the brook bed right over here near 18, that my grandfather before polio had his shop in, and that there was a grist mill in the bottom of that, and they used the water power from that little pond over here that we'll see. And actually, that's Craig. In the 1820s, Jeannie's got it as 30. Jeannie Powers as 1930 or 31. That building was started. Actually, I think they made some kind of a implements in there.
Really?
Yeah, hang on to that again.
What do you mean? You started out that way?
Yeah, let me find the one on the Rabbit Hill here. But anyway, it was at some point it turned into this tavern for the horse and wagons, the auction teams, and okay. This shows the barn that Davies built that I knew as a kid. It wasn't a post and beam barn. It was completely free inside, if you will. The roof was entirely self-supporting, and you could drive right in there right onto the hay floor with a tractor and just pinwheel it right around, unload your hay, and drive right back out. It was really, really, really neat barn, and that was people, the Barrett family that was local here, and maybe like the 30s and 40s. The father actually worked there, running the farm as a hireling, if you will, to Davies. And but Davies did an awful lot for the town, actually. Money is very helpful. Money is very helpful. I'm trying to find where Davies made his fortune.
No, let's find out.
Well, the place, I think Dad took that, excuse me. They were rebuilding the chimney on the back of it. You can see just a piece of the staging right here. Dad was up on the roof of the church, and he took this picture in the 30s, I think it was. But it was at that point, it was the private home of the Davies family. And they lived there from 19 or 20. I don't know when John Davies died, but the family was there until they sold it into the mid-50s, when they sold it to the St. Johnsbury, the owner of the St. Johnsbury house bought this, and this was just kind of a satellite of the St. Johnsbury House Hotel.
And it
There's
was
a picture of it
considered,
Yep.
before it was painted.
Oh,
it was like a motel, and
Yeah.
it had a motel sign right across the top. And there are color photographs that you can find as postcards that
yeah.
show that.
It was originally when it became the it was Rabbit Hill Motor Inn and Motel. And 4 units in the house. I worked there for 8 years as a kid. And what they did, they added on a little length. I always thought it was about 1.5 units, but they added on to that for length when they created the motel. The upstairs used to be a ballroom, and when it was the private home up on the 3rd floor there, they had this little, like a model house that was big enough for kids to play in. 2-story thing built right into the room. I remember playing up there with the families that used to come in the summer to spend time here. The grandchildren, I guess it would be, of the Davies family.
Car coming.
Car coming. Why don't we just pass all 3 of these around the group here? That's what we're coming to down on the corner here. There used to be a covered bridge there, followed by a cement bridge. That change was in 1929 or 1930. And then in the 1970s, they took out the cement bridge, which was kind of narrow and deteriorating with salt, and just put in a big culvert. So we can't, because of the fill for the culvert, you can't see what I used to be able to see as a kid. But Craig was asking about some buildings that he saw on this big picture here. So there used to be a set of
Listen, because I'm going to go too far back.
okay, Craig was asking about this this set of buildings here, that
Yep.
white gable that you can see, and this barn here. There's the barn on the end of the library, right there, and there was a barn on the back side of this right there. We can see the foundation of that. But anyway, in here where this is the mountain system for the Rabbit Hill now. So there was a set of buildings in there. And as we get down a little further here, so the real road, as opposed to the residential road,
Hold on, let him catch up.
the real road came right up along the bank of the brook, which is also the tree line on the left there. Came right up through here, and there was that set of buildings there. I don't know who's got the big thing right now. You've got it. But there was also room on the other side of that road for a little set of buildings, which is right here. You can see the road is on that's looking from that direction, so the road is on the other side of it. So there's a road, there's a set of buildings there, and the road didn't go by the village the way it does now. It came up in just kind of like this one-sided ramp here does, and went right straight across, and I've hung it's in the shade there, but there's an orange, if you can see an orange, there's a plastic bag, right, spray painted. It's hanging right there. The road went right out and behind all the houses that you're used to seeing as you go up 18 there. This was only built in the 30s, this road here.
At the time that the dam was going in.
The Lower Dam?
Yep.
Oh, okay, they did that same time frame.
Yep.
You can see that if you were where you could see all of it. See the stone wall just beyond that goes up and then comes this way, and that was the barn that you see on the end of the Rabbit Hill right here. That's that barn. And because there was no road where 18 is there was this set of buildings here, which is also this set of buildings right, like if you're coming down, this picture is taken from up there. So if you're coming down the street, you would run right into a set of buildings, you know, house, barn, right on the bank of the brook. And that's probably, the bank of the pond, that's probably been built up some when they did the road. You can walk out and
So the road did cross the brook?
oh yeah, that,
Came across the brook.
What's it here, Dave? Where's the bridge here?
okay, okay, here's the shop. It was set right down in the brook bed here. Here's the barn on the Rabbit Hill. This continuous thing here is buildings that set parallel with 18, but and this is the set of buildings that was on this side of this road. So this was replaced, I think Dr. Harris said around 1929.
Okay.
Partly, I think, for load issues, because as things begin getting heavier,
Yep.
you know, a little horse-covered bridge doesn't cut it anymore.
And taller.
Yeah, and probably it just was getting tired too.
So the main road is coming through this way.
Yeah, it's
So
coming up from there.
What was this road called? Where you have the orange
Well, that
bag.
was, this road wasn't here. That was the road. That was the road to St. John's.
Okay, so the main road comes into town but isn't the St. Johnsbury Road.
Well, if you say you're going to Little to St. Johnsbury,
Yep.
and you wanted to cross this bridge,
Yep.
you probably would have just come right up where we're standing,
Now I've
and
got it.
right on there,
Okay.
because this 18 didn't
Okay.
exist until
Okay.
when you're staying.
Okay, so it's that part that's fooling us.
Well, this part was here too, because this is how you got to Upper Waterford. You went right over to near where the cemetery is now,
Okay.
and just beyond that cemetery there's an iron gate. It goes right out to the face of the earth fill of the dam, and
But this would be a foolish way to go to Littleton. You would normally
Not-
go to
not- not
Littleton
foolish.
across here.
not foolish.
Okay.
It must have not been that important because they never rebuilt this bridge. And
Okay.
when they both went out in 1890, they rebuilt that one, but didn't rebuild this one. And this didn't all go out in one slam. The New Hampshire end of it, beyond the center pier, broke off, and this is what Val Polson told me. They intended to repair it, and they put some poles down into the riverbed to support that free end that was dangling, so to speak. And in the spring, the ice and everything kind of picked the poles up and set it right off the middle of the middle pier, and end the bridge.
Okay.
So, four corners.
And then
it wasn't shaped
St.
like it is now.
Johnsbury continued down over through there.
Right up where that orange bag is.
Okay, so
It's just to the right of that sign with the back to us there. Right over that car. See, there's an orange bag up there in the woods.
So if you owned St. Johnsbury from Littleton, you didn't actually have to come into the village.
Well, you
just
came
skirted
you
the
came
edge of
into
it.
where we're standing.
Yeah, okay,
you
right.
came up
You didn't
here,
go
and then you would have just
okay.
made a hard right. And most of these houses are relatively new, but if you go to the fourth house up, it's a light blue, and it sets way back from this 18. The road went right in front of that, probably 20 or 30 foot long. I think there's a family named Johnson in there now.
So we're to upriver.
Yes, yeah. So,
So
whether the name came strictly from the fact that they were Fords, or because a lot of these people were from Ireland, and there was a Waterford Island, or what's your...
almost no Irish at that point.
No?
Nope. Nope.
Well-
Stick with the Fords.
I got a lot of Irish in me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Before the
But
bridge.
at that point.
At that point, right.
Yep. Stick with the Fords. Hey. Okay.
Right after foliage, but when the cement bridge was here, there wasn't all this fill, it was just a bridge. And right down in the brook bed here was you could still see the foundation for that gristmill, blacksmith shop, paint shop building. It was a 3-story building, and there was a sluiceway where you could, and I don't know how that was run, when this was a cement bridge, I thought I could see pieces of what would have been a penstock just laying down there as debris, but I don't, and this is a picture taken from like over there, looking back at the face of the little dam here. And this set of buildings is the same one that are in
That's a gem.
one of the other things. The Davies also improved the dam. It's got a very narrow spillway now with a gate. This was a wide spillway, but I'm sure there was no gate. But when they filled this for the big culvert that now gets the brook under here, it covered everything up. Because Jennifer at the library and I were talking about it, and I went down in there, and I can't find anything of the foundation. The fill is just spreads out so far that it covers it all up.
But even then, this was a pretty steep ravine.
Yeah, because the pictures, I don't know where they all are now, but well, right here. This right here is the roof of the covered bridge. This is the roof of the truck. It's 3 stories.
It's amazing to me that this powered a mill.
That way.
That this powered a mill.
And I don't know if it was like
That's where the steepness, the drop is so important.
Yeah, exactly. But you can see there.
Well, what puzzles me is how they got the water from there to run it. Whether it was they just ran it through a channel and it was like an undershot wheel that Beth has mentioned before, or you said Ben's mill was an undershot, or if they had a penstock.
Actually, Ben's was a turbine and penstock, and the penstock's been rebuilt there.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually connecting this, Eleanor, to your place also, because your round barn was created by someone with silo experience.
Right.
And the silo structuring is exactly what was used for a penstock. A penstock was basically a silo laid flat.
Oh.
So it had the same rings of steel around it, fastened with bolts, and the long lengths of wood, and then you'd use the penstock to guide the water to a specific place on the wheel.
Yeah, I don't know how that was powered.
This almost has to have been a wheel because the water run is smaller.
Yeah, the channel where the water went out wasn't very wide, maybe a couple feet wide in my distant memory. But anyway, it was there, it's just buried.
But you're right that the drop is what made this a valuable property for a mill, because you think about how far down you have to go from here to the river, and this is actually taking that drop. Well, probably half of it is in this first 100 yards.
Yeah, you're right. When you from the sheep hole on, it was much more gradual. But from this, I think on one of the town reports, this was dated at about 1905. Telephone is here, but I don't think power was. See, these are telephone poles with and right over the mother noted on the back here that. Yep, as you approach the bridge. But see, those, remember how the telephone poles used to be with all the little insulators? Yeah. That's not how you run power. That's how you run telephone. And there's that farmhouse in the background there. The road that I'm trying to describe going off through the woods over there is right there. That's the road bed. So this was kind of right on the bank of the pond. Where's Beth?
I'm here.
There's a little thing right here. I don't know if it could be see, I don't see anything coming out of here for like a penstock.
Right.
It could be hidden, but and I don't have a date on this, but there's a little something right there. I didn't know if that could be part of a beginning of a duct or.
Yep, it could be.
Yeah.
Do you know Barry Cahoon?
No.
Works for the state in terms of streams and rivers. Okay. Well, he says it doesn't take much to get enough force for an overshot wheel.
Yeah. But the wheel would have had they had to get the water from here over to there, and I'm not just sure how they did it.
Well, if somebody pokes around the edge of the dam, they'll find that there's a penstock under there.
Well, when the cement bridge was here, and as kids we went under it to play, there was remains of what I thought was a penstock, the hoops.
That way.
So
that makes sense.
but that was
But it would have come
That was
out,
a long time ago.
probably, it could have come out the side here.
Right. That's possible, yeah.
Either under or from the side. Because the mill was here, right?
Right,
Right
on that-
over there, on that
Right,
side.
well, way down.
I don't
Yeah, on
know.
that side of it.
So
How
it
long
easily,
ago
it may not have come through the dam, it may have come out from the side of the pond. And this embankment now has covered the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah. There's a seasonality to it too. We think because we see industries running year round, we think that's how they all
This
ran.
thing only could have run when there was high flow.
Exactly.
It would have run for an hour.
Or they
Right.
would save it for a while, generate, or mill for a couple hours. And
Right,
Then, and then wait till they accumulated more water.
right.
Yeah. There's a little one-room school. There's a sign on it now that says 1880. The sign wasn't there when I was a kid, but evidently somebody determined that that was the date and put up a sign. What I didn't neglected to say when we were right at the downstairs of the library, the sign that now says Lower Waterford Post Office, now with the zip on it, I'm sure it's the same sign. It was on the L of our old house when Grammy had it. It was on the end of the old house when Mother had it, and very well could have been up on when Ferns had it up there.
That's great.
But okay, I'm out of wind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
No, it's all very interesting.